The first sign was the salt shaker. I know how that sounds. It's not a bloody handprint on the wall or a chilling whisper in the dark. It's a salt shaker. But I have rituals. Little anchors of order in the chaos of a freelance graphic designer's life. Every morning, I make coffee, toast a bagel, and arrange my breakfast nook just so. Napkin on the left, plate in the centre, coffee mug on the upper right. The salt and pepper shakers. A quirky ceramic set shaped like kissing gnomes. Sit precisely in the middle of the table, side by side, facing the window. I'm particular. Some might say obsessive. I call it maintaining control. That Tuesday, the salt gnome was on the left of the pepper gnome. I stared at it for a full minute, a cold trickle of unease sliding down my spine. Had I put it back wrong yesterday? No, impossible. My end-of-day cleanup is as ingrained as my morning setup. I switched them back, the smooth ceramic cool against my fingertips, and dismissed it. A brain fart. A momentary lapse in my otherwise flawless system. But the lapses kept coming. A book on my nightstand, The Shadow of the Wind, was face down, though I always use a bookmark. The thermostat, which I keep religiously at 19 degrees Celsius, would be cranked to a stuffy 22. My favourite lavender-scented soap in the shower seemed to shrink faster than usual, its fragrance fainter each morning. These were whispers of wrongness, too small and too intimate to share. If I told my friend Chloe, she'd say I was working too hard. My brain misfiring from staring at a screen for 14 hours a day. If I told the police, they'd laugh me out of the station. "Sir, are you reporting a renegade gnome?" So, I said nothing. I just started double-checking everything. I'd photographed the salt and pepper shakers before leaving the house. I'd take a picture of my bookshelf. I became a frantic curator of my own life, documenting the mundane in a desperate attempt to prove I wasn't losing my mind. The first real jolt came a week later. It was a single, perfect gardenia resting on my doormat. It wasn't from a secret admirer. There was no note, no ribbon. It was just there, its waxy white petals already starting to brown at the edges. My apartment building has a secure entrance. You need a key fob to get in the main door, and then a key for my apartment on the 3rd floor. I asked my neighbours. No one saw anything. The super, a gruff man named Mr. Henderson, checked the security footage. Nothing. The gifts continued. A small, intricately carved wooden bird on my kitchen windowsill. A vintage postcard of a seaside town I'd never visited, tucked inside my mailbox, separate from the regular post. There was never a note. Just the objects, silent and unnerving testaments to a presence I couldn't see. Then, the notes started. They weren't threatening, not in the traditional sense. There were no cut-out letters or promises of violence. They were worse. They were observations. You hum when you water your ferns. It's a lovely sound. I found that one on a small slip of paper, placed neatly on the soil of my largest fern. My blood went cold. I only ever hummed when I was alone, lost in the quiet routine of caring for my plants. The blue shirt is my favourite. It matches your eyes. That note was folded and tucked into the pocket of the very shirt it mentioned, hanging in my closet. I hadn't worn it in months. I tore through my wardrobe, my heart hammering against my ribs. Had they been in here, touched my clothes. I felt a phantom sliminess on my skin, a deep, violating chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. I called the police. Detective Jones, a man with a tired face and a coffee-stained tie, came to my apartment. He listened with a patient, practiced air of sympathy that didn't quite reach his eyes. I showed him the notes, the log of misplaced objects on my phone. "Mr. Miller," he said, his voice gentle but dismissive. "There's no sign of forced entry. The locks are top of the line. Are you sure there isn't someone else with a key? A friend? An ex-girlfriend? A cleaning service?" "No one," I insisted, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and frustration. "I live alone. I've always lived alone." He suggested I change the locks again, just in case. He gave me a pamphlet on anxiety and told me to call if anything more concrete happened. His words. I knew what he meant. A broken window, a black eye. Until then, I was just another man who'd gone nuts, imagining ghosts in his apartment. His visit only amplified my isolation. My friends tried to be supportive, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. They'd exchange worried glances when I'd stop mid-sentence, convinced I'd heard a floorboard creak in the hallway. I stopped going out. My home, once my sanctuary, had become a cage. I was its only prisoner, and also, somehow, its guard. The paranoia became a living entity. I started setting traps. Not bear traps, but tiny, secret alarms. A single strand of my own dark hair taped across the bottom of my bedroom door. A fine, almost invisible layer of flour sprinkled on the floor inside my closet. A coin balanced precariously on top of a door frame. For 3 days, nothing. The hair remained unbroken, the flour undisturbed, the coin steadfast. I started to feel a sliver of hope, a dangerous, fragile thing. Maybe Jones was right. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe the stress had finally cracked me open. On the 4th morning, I woke up with a gasp, the remnants of a nightmare clinging to me like smoke. In the dream, a shadowy figure stood at the foot of my bed, its featureless face tilted as it watched me sleep. I sat up and surveyed the room. Everything looked normal. The sun was just beginning to stream through the blinds, striping the floor with pale light. I swung my legs out of bed and went through my morning checklist. Hair on the bedroom door, intact. Coin on the bathroom door, intact. I let out a shaky breath. It was just a dream. Then, I checked the closet. My hand froze on the doorknob. I knelt down. The flour was still there, a pale dusting on the dark hardwood. But, in the centre of it, stark and undeniable, was a single, partial footprint. It wasn't mine. It was a bare footprint, someone with long arches. And leading away from it, back towards the rear of the closet, were faint smudges, as if someone had tried and failed to wipe it clean. I didn't scream. The sound was trapped behind a wall of ice in my chest. This was it. The concrete proof. They were real. Someone was getting in. My mind raced, a chaotic storm of possibilities. A master key? A picked lock? But the police had checked the locks. They were pristine. How were they doing it? That afternoon, I bought a nanny cam. A tiny, black cube, no bigger than a sugar cube. The man at the electronics store gave me a knowing, sleazy smile. assuming I was trying to catch a cheating partner. I wanted to tell him the truth, which was infinitely more terrifying. I hid the camera on my bookshelf, nestled between a thick copy of War and Peace and a collection of Poe's short stories. The lens had a perfect, unobstructed view of my entire apartment. The living room, the kitchenette, and the door to my bedroom. I set it to record on motion detection and linked it to my phone. Then, I left. I went to a diner 2 towns over, a place I'd never been, and sat there for hours, nursing a single black coffee. My phone clutched in my hand like a holy relic. My phone buzzed at 10:17 p.m. Motion detected in living room. My blood turned to ice water. I fumbled to open the app, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely type my password. The live feed flickered to life. The screen showed my apartment, steeped in the green glow of night vision. It was empty. The camera must have been triggered by a car's headlights, a shadow shifting. I watched for 10 minutes, my heart pounding, but nothing moved. The next notification came at 3:04 a.m. I dozed off in the uncomfortable diner chair, my neck stiff. Motion detected in living room. This time, the feed showed a figure. It was a woman, tall and slender, dressed in dark clothing. She moved with a quiet, fluid grace that was horrifying in its familiarity. She wasn't searching the apartment or stealing anything. She was just there. She walked to my fridge, opened it, and drank milk straight from the carton. My carton. She went to my bookshelf and ran a single finger along the spines of my books. Her head tilted in contemplation. She picked up the wooden bird from the windowsill and held it in her palm, stroking it with her thumb. I watched, paralyzed, a silent scream trapped in my throat. She was so comfortable, so at home. It was a violation more profound than theft. She was consuming my life, my space, my very air. But the most terrifying part was that I never saw her enter. The front door remained shut and locked. The windows were sealed. It was as though she'd materialized out of thin air. I rewound the footage from the first notification, scanning it frame by frame. There, at 10:17 p.m, the motion wasn't from outside. It was from inside. The door to my bedroom closet, which was just in the frame, had moved. It hadn't opened. It had shifted. A dark line had appeared on the back wall of the closet itself. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. I zoomed in. It wasn't a shadow. It was a gap. A perfectly cut, vertical seam in the drywall. As I watched, the seam widened, and a panel of the wall swung silently inward, revealing a sliver of absolute blackness beyond. And from that blackness, the figure emerged. She hadn't been breaking in. She'd been there all along. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The crawl space. When I'd moved in, the landlord had mentioned a small, sealed-off crawl space behind the closet. A relic of some old renovation. Useless space, he'd called it. All walled up. She wasn't just getting into my apartment. She was living in it. Living inside my walls like a termite, a parasite. The misplaced items, the humming, the blue shirt. She'd seen it all. She'd been there, feet away, breathing the same recycled air, separated only by a thin layer of plaster and paint. Every night when I went to sleep, she was there, watching. My phone dinged again, a new notification. Motion detected in bedroom. I switched the live feed, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The camera was on my bookshelf in the living room, but the bedroom door was ajar. I could see the edge of my bed, the rumpled duvet. And then I saw movement. A shadow detaching itself from the deeper shadows of the room. She was out. She was out of the crawl space, and she was in my bedroom, right now. My phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the table. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent diner. The waitress looked up, annoyed. I didn't care. She was in there, and I wasn't. I was safe, for now. That thought was immediately followed by a wave of cold dread. My laptop, my wallet. I'd only taken out $20 with me. My entire life was in that apartment. I couldn't just abandon it. I had to go back. I had to face her. But how do you face a ghost who lives in your walls? I called 911. This time, I didn't sound hysterical. My voice was flat, dead, stripped of all emotion. There's a strange woman inside my apartment. I have her on video. She lives in my walls. I met 2 uniformed officers and Detective Jones in the lobby of my building. This time, Jones's eyes were wide with something other than boredom. I showed him the footage on my phone. The colour drained from his face. "Stay here, Mr. Miller," he commanded, his voice tight. The 2 officers drew their weapons, their movements swift and professional. I watched them go up the stairs, my legs too weak to follow, even if I'd wanted to. I stood in the sterile lobby, the silence broken only by the hum of the vending machine. Every second stretched into an eternity. I imagined them finding the panel, the dark, cramped space she'd called home. I imagined the confrontation. Then, I heard a shout from upstairs. A crash, another shout, this one choked with pain. Then, silence. A moment later, the elevator dinged. The doors slid open. It wasn't the police. It was her. She was holding a fire extinguisher, a dark, bloody gash on her forehead. She had greasy, stringy black hair falling over her face. It looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes, a pale, washed-out blue, found mine across the lobby. They weren't filled with rage or madness. They were filled with a terrible, possessive longing. It was the look of a collector whose prized possession was trying to escape its glass box. "You shouldn't have done that, James," she said, her voice a soft, rasping whisper that I'd somehow heard in my dreams. "I was taking care of you." She took a step out of the elevator. I didn't think. I ran. I burst through the front doors and onto the street, the cold night air hitting my face. I didn't look back. I just ran, my feet pounding against the pavement, the sound of my own ragged breaths filling my ears. I didn't stop running until the city lights were a blurry smear behind me, and the only sound was the frantic, terrified beating of my own heart. They caught her, eventually. Her name was Agatha. She'd been a labourer who helped renovate the building years ago. She'd built her little nest then, waiting for the right person to move in. She told the police she'd been watching me for months before she moved into the walls, learning my routines, my likes, my dislikes. She wanted to be the perfect, unseen companion. Apparently, she'd had boyfriends in the past, but the police couldn't get her to tell them what happened to them. I moved out, of course. I live in a new city now, in a brand new building with no history and no crawl spaces. I have 3 locks on my door. I don't own any gnomes. But the safety I once took for granted is gone forever. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I'll hear a floorboard creak. A pipe will groan in the wall. And, in that space between waking and sleeping, I'll see her. Not the woman in the elevator with blood on her face, but the silent figure from the video, moving through my home, her home, with a quiet, proprietary grace. I found my stalker inside my house, but the truth is, I never got her out of my head. She's in the walls of my mind now, a permanent resident in the architecture of my fear. And I know, with a certainty that chills me to my very soul, that I'll never, ever truly be alone again.